Hi everyone, my name is Tanya Crossman. I'm a cross-cultural consultant specialising in advocating for and supporting third culture kids and cross-cultural kids, and also cross-cultural communication. And I'm the author of Misunderstood: The Impact of Growing Up Overseas in the 21st Century. And I'm here today to talk to you about repatriation and the impact it has on third culture kids. I only have a few minutes with you, so I'm going to jump straight in. Repatriation is going to live in your passport country after spending some time, usually a few years away. And for third culture kids, this can be quite a difficult experience. So for my book, I did a survey of about 750 third culture kids of various ages. And I also did interviews with nearly 300 third culture kids. And repatriation was over and over again, especially in interviews, one of the most difficult experiences that TCKs talked about. The thing that they said that they wish they'd understood better or that they found the most difficult to go through. In the survey, over half of TCKs described repatriation as painful. And I wanted to talk through a little bit about why that is, why repatriation is difficult for third culture kids. It's difficult for everybody, but there's a few reasons that it can be particularly difficult for third culture kids. I wanted to read you a couple stories actually from my book. One of the things I did with my book was share a lot of stories from TCKs in their own words, because I think it's important to hear how people feel and express their own experiences. So here's a story from an 18-year-old. She said, "A lot of people didn't understand how much living overseas had changed my life. Also, because it was such a different lifestyle, they didn't understand why I had such a hard time readjusting to American life when that was what I had lived before. I feel like some were more sympathetic than others, but then there were those who just thought it was silly that I was so upset." That's one thing that can be difficult for third culture kids when they repatriate. This idea that people they interact with think that they're coming home and so they should be thankful and grateful, and aren't you glad to be here? More than half of the TCKs I surveyed said that they really disliked it when people said welcome home when they were in their passport country, because for them home was a more complicated concept. So the idea that they were moving home wasn't quite correct, wasn't quite right. So repatriation isn't moving home, it's moving to another new location, except this location is different. It's not another international community in most cases. They're moving to a community that will see them as local, even though they feel foreign. There is often this disconnect. Now, for some TCKs, they have this sense that I'm going to be local, I'm going to be normal. And that can be a particularly difficult experience when they get there and realize that they don't completely fit in. So my first experience of repatriation, I've done this a couple of times, was as a 15-year-old, having spent a few years in high school in the US with my family living over there as a business family, coming back to Australia. I had difficulty adapting to life in a high school in the US, especially because I really did stand out. My accent made me stand out. My awareness of pop culture was different. Fashion was different. Everything was a bit different. And, you so desperately want to fit in high school anyway. And then when you stand out in all these little ways, I had this real sense of I desperately wanted to go back and be normal. And then I got to Australia and to starting a new school there and realized that in the 2 years I'd been gone, I had shifted. My language had shifted slightly. My accent has shifted slightly. My sense of fashion and makeup and all these things had shifted slightly. And I didn't completely fit in anymore. And so one of the nicknames I was given was Miss America. It was quite crushing to realize that who I thought I wasn't how other people saw me. And a lot of TCKs go through things like that, where their sense of identity shifts, where who I think I am, or who people see me as in this context, is not who they see me as in that context. That can be true for adults as well, but it can be particularly difficult for TCKs who don't have any memory of having lived in that culture before and have only got memories of living in international cultures. They don't have a frame of reference for what it means to live in that country. And it can also be difficult for TCKs who think they do know what it's like, and then it's not the same this time. One thing that can be difficult is in this age of internet connection and you stay in touch with friends, is to go back and realize that even having stayed in touch and had, you know, video calls and played games online or whatever it is that you've done to stay in touch, that it wasn't enough, that it didn't fill all the gaps, that you didn't keep up with all the pop culture and with all the group activities and with all the way things were, and that you're still a bit behind. That can be a really a sad experience, a depressing experience. It can be this sense of the gap between the expectation of what you thought it would be and then when you get there and it's different. That gap in your expectations is much more common in repatriation than in moving to another foreign location. Because when you are foreign, people around you have less expectations for your ability to interact normally, and you have less expectations, lower expectations for yourself. And if you're moving from international school to an international school, your expectations are probably more close to accurate anyway, because you know how an international school works. You're more likely to have these disappointed expectations going from an international school to a local school, and especially to your passport country when you're seen differently. The other thing that can be really difficult with repatriation is family and friends, so people that you have established relationships with, having expectations for you, for who you are, for how you'll behave, and feeling that you're disappointing them, that you aren't who they think you are, and therefore that your choices are, I can either fake it and pretend, or I can disappoint them. And that's a really difficult choice to have to make. And especially for younger TCKs repatriating, it's a very difficult choice to make as a young person, and it can shape how they see themselves moving forward. So something for parents to keep in mind is that even as you repatriate, making sure that you keep safe space for your family, for your kids to express different sides of their personality after you repatriate. I had a really emotional and important interaction with a Vietnamese family in Vietnam. They had recently repatriated. Their daughter had been 4 when they left Vietnam, and didn't really remember Vietnam. Her Vietnamese wasn't great. She'd been in an English-speaking international school while they'd been overseas, and was now going to a local Vietnamese school. And she could keep up, but she felt frustrated. And she was struggling with the difference in discipline and way school ran, all those kind of things. And so her parents' initial thought was, well, we should speak more Vietnamese to her to help her catch up faster, things like that. And their daughter just got angry and all these outbursts, and the parents were really hurt and didn't know what to do. And as we talked it through, and we talked through the emotions their daughter was experiencing, that she feels a complete loss of control. Everything in her life has changed. She's very confused. School is different. She doesn't know people. The one time in her day that she gets to speak English is in her English class, where she speaks better English than the English teacher, which the English teacher then resents. You know, that she'll catch up with the Vietnamese, she'll get there, but giving her a space at home where she can be the piece of her that she can't be the rest of the day would actually be really helpful for her. Let her blow off steam, let her be that piece of herself she can't be all day. And to their credit, her parents really took what I was sharing to heart and went, oh, we can see how that would feel for her. And they sat her down in front of me and said, we've been talking to Tanya and we think we understand a bit more how you might be feeling. And sort of shared some empathy of how maybe it would feel like this. And we're really sorry that we didn't understand. And from now on, this is what we're going to do. You can speak whatever language you want to at home. You can speak English anytime you want to. And they said all of this in English, ostensibly because I was there, but also because it gave them an excuse to start having English as a language at home. And she just relaxed into this smile. And they told me, you know, even a week later, that there was a huge difference in her behaviour. So that safe space to be everything they can't be outside the house is helpful anywhere, but especially helpful upon repatriation, where that foreign piece of their life that's been everything up till now disappears. That can be really important, whether that's food that you've enjoyed in places that you've lived, whether that's all the TCKs I know from China who use chopsticks to eat their popcorn or their salad. Whatever it is, bringing those parts of their life and identity together in that safe space, even if they can't be that person at school, is really helpful. I wanted to read another story to you because I think, as difficult as it can be, there are a lot of benefits to repatriation. Because one thing I do especially now, I've been working a lot with young adult TCKs in this process of how do I work out what to do with this legacy of this childhood I've been given. And one thing I've started advocating for is I think it's really helpful for TCKs to develop a connection to their passport country, to spend enough time living there to make it a place that they can go back to and live in comfortably, even if they end up going away and not going back for a very long time, if ever, that they know that they can. And so this is a story from Stephanie, who was 20 when she said this. And she said, near the end of high school, I realized I had no right to call Singapore home. I had never even lived there. And if I couldn't call Singapore home, where would home be? Thailand? All my memories of Thailand have long faded away. Germany? I must have been only 4.5 when I left. China? The place I lived for so many years, speak the language and have made so many lifelong friends. But to call China home would be shameful, because I know that what I was exposed to in living there was the expatriate life, barely ever breaking out of the bubble. School, home, other housing compounds, high-end shopping malls. I never really ventured beyond these places. So I decided I should get to know Singapore more and finally earn the right to be a Singaporean. That idea of earning the right, most of the TCKs I've talked to and in previous research I've done see a difference between the paperwork, the piece of paper that says you belong to a country, and the actual experience of being a citizen. And there's something powerful about bringing those two things together, about having that experiential, emotional connection to the place that you have a piece of paper from. And so while the experience of repatriation can be painful, can be difficult, I think it really is worth the effort. And so while it can be difficult, I think it's worth sticking it out. And for TCKs who are older and haven't been through this, I think it is a difficult experience that's worth the effort. And if you want to know more, if you want to work through that, talk through that, you can find me on a lot of different social media. You can find me through FIGT. I'm on all the groups. But yeah, please keep investing and keep connecting with people. There's lots of information out there. And this is just a brief introduction, but yeah, it's difficult, but it's worth the journey. So that's just a little taste from me, and I will hopefully run into you all again sometime soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.